It was close to 11:30 at night when Simone Harris, a nurse at Baldwin County General, pulled her silver Toyota Camry into an old half-lit gas station just outside the small town of Milledgeville, Georgia. She had just finished a brutal double shift in the ICU, where every moment felt like life or death. Her legs were sore, her eyes dry from hours of exhaustion, and her mind was barely keeping up with the pace of her body. All she wanted was to fill her tank, head home to her quiet, modest house on West Elm, and get some rest. Her twins, Marcus and Jada, were at home with a neighbor, and Simone had already sent them a text telling them to get ready for bed. Her focus was entirely on getting back to them safely. The soft glow of the gas station lights flickered, and the hum of the old pumps filled the air as Simone stepped out of the car, grabbing her wallet. She hesitated, looked around, then exhaled deeply. The long day had drained her, but she needed to finish this last task. She inserted her card into the machine and paused, glancing over her shoulder at the nearly empty lot. A slight shiver ran down her spine. It wasn't unusual to be alone at this hour, but the stillness felt eerie. Just as she was about to pump the gas, the headlights of a black SUV flared in her rearview mirror. She tensed, hearing the roar of tires against gravel as the vehicle swung around her and parked directly behind her car. Two officers, young and in their 30s, stepped out of the SUV, their hands resting on their belts. Simone's stomach turned. She kept her hands visible on the car, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Ma'am," the first officer said, his voice flat as he approached with a flashlight. "Can I see your license and registration?" Simone blinked, confused. "Is there a problem, officer?" "We got a call about a suspicious vehicle matching this description. Need to make sure it's not stolen," he said, his tone impersonal. Simone's heart rate quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "I just got off work. I'm a nurse at Baldwin County General. My ID's still on me." She pointed slowly to her hospital badge clipped to her scrubs. Her fingers trembled. The officer didn't even glance at it. "Registration and ID," he repeated. His eyes narrowed as he watched her every move. Simone, confused, reached for her wallet on the passenger seat. Her thoughts raced. "I just need to get home to my kids." Her hands shook as she fumbled with the wallet. There was something off about this entire interaction. She felt it deep in her gut. The second officer, his partner, circled around the car to the passenger side. "You live around here?" he asked, peering through the window at the car seat in the back, covered by a small fleece blanket. Simone froze. "Yes," she replied, her voice sharp. The officer leaned in a little closer, his eyes scanning the interior. "You got someone with you?" "No, just me," she said, her patience running thin. Then the first officer spoke again. "Pop the trunk." Simone raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "Pop the trunk, ma'am," the officer repeated, his tone becoming more forceful. She stared at him, incredulous. "On what grounds?" The officer stepped forward, his voice cold. "Ma'am, this is a routine request. If you don't comply, we may have to escalate." Simone swallowed, her chest tightening. She could feel her pulse pounding in her throat. Not tonight, not after everything. Her eyes narrowed and she made a decision. "I'm calling my father," she said, her voice low but unwavering. Both officers hesitated. The first officer frowned but said nothing. Simone turned her back to them, keeping one hand raised, and dialed the number she knew by heart. One ring. Then her father's calm voice came through. "Simone?" His voice was low, steady. "What's going on?" "Daddy, I need you to come to the Shell station off Highway 22. Right now." There was a pause, then a single response. "I'm on my way." She hung up. The officers exchanged confused glances. One of them, Officer Hayes, took a step forward. "What was that?" Simone didn't respond. She knew exactly who was coming, and she wasn't concerned about their reactions. As the night stretched on, the tension grew. The officers didn't back off, and if anything, they moved in closer, clearly trying to assert their authority. But they had no idea who was about to show up. Simone's heart raced as the minutes ticked by, and she could feel the weight of their eyes on her. The stillness between them was thick, like a heavy fog. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying, and that seemed to make them more uneasy than anything else. "You don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be," Officer Hayes said, his voice rough. Simone took a deep breath, her hand still visible. I'm standing here doing nothing wrong. You asked for ID. I gave it. You asked where I live. I told you. Why are you still pressing me? Before Officer Hayes could respond, a black SUV turned off the highway and rolled into the lot. Its dark-tinted windows barely visible as it stopped next to Simone's car. The door opened and a tall, imposing figure stepped out. The moment he did, the energy in the parking lot shifted. The man who stepped out of the black SUV was about 6'3", with broad shoulders and a commanding presence. His dark, weathered skin and stone-gray hair gave him a look of experience. But it was his eyes, steady and sharp, that really drew the attention of the two officers. They were the kind of eyes that didn't need to prove anything. They already knew the power they held. Simone's heart skipped a beat, but not from fear. She had seen that look before. It was the look of her father, Colonel Darius Rollins. It didn't matter that the officers didn't recognize him. She knew that with him in the picture, things were about to change. "Daddy," she said softly, the words slipping out before she could stop it. She could feel the tension in her shoulders ease just a little. He was here. Darius didn't acknowledge the officers right away. His gaze shifted from Simone to the men standing in front of her. His posture was calm, controlled, but there was an underlying force that seemed to pull the air around him taut. Officer Hayes, still gripping the edge of his flashlight, glanced at Darius with a mixture of confusion and hesitation. The other officer, Fielding, looked more uncertain, his eyes darting between the two men like he wasn't sure who was in charge now. "Problem here, gentlemen?" Darius asked, his voice steady but sharp. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. There was no question of authority. His presence alone made the question sound almost absurd. Officer Hayes finally cleared his throat, trying to regain some control over the situation. "This is a police matter," he muttered, though his confidence faltered. "We're conducting an investigation." Darius's eyes narrowed just slightly, a look that felt like it was cutting through the facade. "An investigation?" he repeated slowly, his voice a calm challenge. "Of a nurse in scrubs at a gas pump?" There was silence for a beat, and then Darius spoke again, his voice low but unmistakable. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a woman, tired after working a double shift, trying to get home to her kids. And I see two officers using the weight of their badges to push her around for no reason." Officer Hayes shifted uncomfortably. The air was thick with tension. Fielding glanced at his partner, then back at Darius, but neither said a word. Darius didn't wait for an answer. "You're treating her like a criminal when all she did was stop to get gas," he continued, his gaze now fixed squarely on Hayes. "Do you think that's what you're supposed to be doing? Or are you just using your badge to bully people who don't fight back?" Hayes opened his mouth, but Darius cut him off with a simple gesture, his hand up in the air, palm facing toward the officers. "I don't need you to explain yourself," Darius said, his voice growing colder. "I need you to think about the last time you had to answer for something like this. The last time you treated someone like they were guilty for nothing at all." The two officers exchanged glances, their earlier bravado gone. Darius was holding court now, and they knew they weren't going to win this one. Simone's hands trembled as she reached for the gas nozzle. For the first time in what felt like hours, she allowed herself to breathe, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. She still couldn't shake the weight of the situation, but her father was here, and that was enough. The clerk from inside the gas station had come outside, a young man in a bright hoodie, looking around nervously but firm in his intent. "Hey, officers," he called, trying to keep his voice neutral. "She's just getting gas. Ain't bothering nobody. The cameras caught everything if you need it." "Stay inside, son," Hayes snapped, but the clerk didn't back down. "It kinda does," he said, giving a short nod towards Simone before looking back at the officers. "She's just getting gas." Darius watched the exchange closely, his eyes fixed on Hayes. There was a momentary silence before he spoke again. "Son, you've got kids, right?" Darius asked Fielding, his voice softer, but carrying a weight that made the officer shift in place. Fielding nodded without speaking. "You think this is how you'd want someone treating your kid's mother?" Darius asked. Fielding didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Simone finally finished pumping the gas, her hands still slightly shaking, but her resolve was stronger now. As she reached to replace the nozzle, she glanced over at her father. "You good?" he asked, his voice calm. Yeah, she replied quietly. Darius stood by her car, watching the officers as she slid into the driver's seat. His presence was still an unspoken shield around her. And with one final look at the deputies, he turned to walk back toward his SUV. But what happened next would follow these officers far beyond that parking lot. As Darius made his way back toward his SUV, he kept his back straight, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The air was still thick with tension, but he wasn't worried. The moment he had stepped onto that lot, everything had shifted. And as the old SUV's engine roared to life, he felt the familiar sense of control settle in. Simone's hands tightened around the steering wheel, her eyes flicking between the rearview mirror and the road ahead. Her heart was still pounding, but now there was something else. Anger. The way those officers had looked at her. The way they had treated her like she was the problem. It wasn't just about getting gas anymore. It was about being seen for who she was. And it was about the realization that she couldn't let things slide anymore. Not after everything. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car door slamming behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes narrowing when she saw the clerk from the gas station walking toward them, a determined look on his face. His footsteps were quick, but not rushed, like he knew exactly what he needed to do. Simone rolled down her window as he approached. "You don't know me," he started, "but I saw what happened, and I just want to say thank you." Simone blinked, surprised. "Thank you?" she echoed, unsure of what to say. "Yeah," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You stood up to them. I don't know how you stayed so calm, but you did. They were wrong, all of them. They had no right to treat you that way." He paused for a moment before adding, "And I filmed the whole thing." Simone's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling just slightly. The clerk held up his phone, showing her the footage. "I've got everything on video. The moment they pulled up, the way they approached you, all of it. It's all on here." He looked at her, his expression softening. "You didn't deserve that, and I'm not gonna let them get away with it." Simone's eyes widened. She had no idea what to say. She wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't looking for a fight. She just wanted to get home. But now, with this evidence in hand, she realized that maybe this fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something bigger. The clerk offered the phone to her, but Simone hesitated. "Are you sure you want to get involved in this?" she asked. She knew how things could escalate, how one small action could turn into a much larger problem. He gave her a small, resolute smile. "I've seen enough. People like them don't get to walk over others, especially not someone like you. You didn't do anything wrong, and they shouldn't have treated you like that. It's not right." His voice lowered, almost like he was sharing a secret. "I've seen those officers before. They've pulled this kind of stuff with other people too. But this time I'm not staying quiet." Simone's gaze softened as she took the phone from him, her fingers brushing his. She nodded in appreciation, realizing that she couldn't back down either. This wasn't just about her pride, it was about doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "I won't forget this." The clerk nodded once and then turned to go back inside the gas station. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He had already made his choice. Simone put the car into drive, her eyes locking on the road ahead. But her thoughts were elsewhere. Darius had taught her that silence in the face of injustice was complicity. He had taught her how to stand tall and how to make her voice heard, even when everything inside her wanted to shrink back. And as much as she didn't want this to be her fight, she now knew she couldn't walk away from it, not with this much at stake. As she turned out of the parking lot, she glanced in the rearview mirror again, half expecting to see the officers trailing her, but they weren't there. The lot was empty, save for a few late-night customers and the faint hum of the gas station's fluorescent lights. But Simone knew that the battle wasn't over. The moment the video hit the news, things would shift. The sheriff's office would have to answer. The officers would have to face the consequences for what they'd done. And if they didn't? Simone's grip tightened around the wheel, her heart pounding once again, but this time with determination. Her father's words echoed in her head. Silence is never the answer. You speak up, even when the world tells you not to. And as she drove, she realized he was right. It wasn't just about speaking up. It was about making sure that when the world changed, it would change for the better. for everyone. The next morning, the world felt different. Simone woke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The bright morning sun filtered through her curtains, but it wasn't the sun that was burning through her thoughts. It was the images of last night. The officers, her father's presence, and most of all, the video that was now in the hands of so many people. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. It was a text from her best friend, Monica. "Did you see the video? It's everywhere now." Simone sat up in bed, her eyes scanning the message. Her stomach churned. The video, which had started with one small, quiet recording, had already gone viral. The gas station footage of her standing her ground had spread like wildfire. She could feel the weight of it settling on her shoulders. "Not today," she muttered to herself, getting up and walking to the window. The morning was still and quiet, but everything felt different. The world was waking up to the reality of what had happened, to what she had endured, to what she had fought for. Simone's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at her door. She opened it to find Darius standing on the other side, his expression unreadable, but his eyes full of understanding. "You good?" he asked, his deep voice calm, like it always was, even in the storm of a crisis. Simone nodded, stepping aside so he could enter. "I'm fine, just trying to process everything." Darius closed the door behind him and leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "It's gonna be a lot," he said quietly, "but you did the right thing. You stood tall, like I knew you would." Simone met his gaze, her eyes sharp. "I never wanted this. I didn't ask for it. But now that it's out there, what do I do?" Darius took a deep breath, then shook his head slightly. "You let it unfold. Sometimes the right thing to do is just let things play out. You speak when you need to, but don't get caught up in the noise." Simone stared out the window, her mind racing. "It's not just noise, Dad. The whole town's talking about it. The sheriff's office is already investigating, and it's all over the news. What if they try to silence me? What if this makes it worse?" Her father's voice was steady as he replied, "They can't silence the truth. It's already out there, and you have something they can't take from you. Your voice, your strength. That's what people are seeing. You didn't just take it, you made sure the world saw it." As Simone processed her father's words, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. A headline in bold letters flashed across the screen. "Baldwin County Sheriff's deputies under investigation after controversial stop of nurse at local gas station." Simone clicked on the link, and her stomach dropped as she saw the video front and center. The same footage from last night, only now it was on every major news outlet. The screen was filled with headlines and comments. People from all over were weighing in, some supportive, others skeptical. And at the bottom of the article, Simone noticed a new name, Sheriff Clayton Bruner, and a statement from his office. "We are aware of the video circulating on social media and have placed the officers involved on temporary leave while we conduct a full investigation. We take this matter seriously and are committed to transparency in our actions." Simone snorted, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Transparency, huh?" she muttered, her eyes scanning the comments. Most of them were calling for the officers' removal, but some echoed the usual rhetoric about the thin blue line and just following orders. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was from Monica. "This is going to blow up. Just saw it on TV. People are already calling for the officers to be fired. I'm proud of you, Sim." Simone's heart raced, but there was no time to savor the victory. She knew the battle was only beginning. People were calling for change, but there were still forces in play that would fight to protect their own. The sheriff's office wouldn't back down easily. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Simone barely made it through her shift at Baldwin County General. The constant stream of messages, phone calls, and media inquiries wore on her. She tried to keep her focus on her patients, but each time her phone buzzed, it was a reminder of the storm that was brewing around her. But when she got home that evening, the weight of it all hit her. The twins were sitting at the kitchen table playing with their Legos. The house smelled like home, and for a moment, it almost felt like everything was normal. But Simone couldn't shake the feeling that the world was watching her now, waiting for her next move. Her father arrived later that evening. He didn't speak much, just sat beside her on the couch, watching the news coverage of the event. The segment showed footage of her and the officers at the gas station, followed by interviews with the sheriff and other community leaders. "It's not over yet," Darius said, breaking the silence. "But they can't erase what you did. And they won't stop it either. Not now." Simone nodded. She was tired, so tired. But she knew what came next. The town was watching, the sheriff was scrambling, and for the first time, she felt like her voice mattered. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The media coverage exploded, with news outlets across the state picking up the story. Simone found herself at the center of a storm she had never anticipated. But strangely, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. The video of the gas station confrontation had not only gone viral, but had sparked a ripple effect. People from all walks of life, not just in Baldwin County, but across the country, were reaching out to her, telling her their own stories of injustice, of being misunderstood, of being silenced by systems far bigger than them. Despite the support, the pressure was immense. Simone was now a symbol, a face for something much larger than a single encounter. The weight of the situation wasn't lost on her. Every morning, as she stood in front of the mirror, her reflection seemed different, almost like she was seeing someone new, a woman who had been pushed to the edge and had decided to stand her ground. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Monica. "Tamika, we need to talk. There's a meeting tomorrow. The mayor's office wants to meet with you." The mayor. Mayor Clayton Klein had been re-elected twice and had managed to keep a low profile during his time in office. But now, with the pressure mounting, he was taking steps, real steps, to address what had happened at the gas station. Simone wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing for sure. The people in power were being forced to acknowledge the truth. Simone sat down at the kitchen table, her heart racing. She had no idea what was coming next, but she had a feeling that this meeting could determine how things would unfold in the coming weeks. The next morning, she walked into the mayor's office with Darius at her side. She had learned that sometimes strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing when to ask for support, when to lean on the people who cared for you. Darius was always calm, always steady, but there was something in his eyes today, a quiet pride. Mayor Klein was waiting for them in the office, a sleek, modern room that exuded authority. He stood up when they entered, offering a firm handshake to Simone. His face was tight with concern, but there was a hint of genuine empathy behind his eyes. "Ms. Rollins," he began, his voice measured but sincere, "I want to start by offering a formal apology. What happened that night was unacceptable. I understand that you've been through a lot, and I want you to know that we're taking action." Simone nodded, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I appreciate that, Mayor Klein, but actions speak louder than words. I need to know what you plan to do next." The mayor glanced at his assistant, who handed him a folder. "We're starting an independent review of the sheriff's office. We've already put both officers on administrative leave, and we'll be working closely with state authorities to ensure transparency throughout the process. I want to make sure this never happens again." Simone listened, her eyes narrowing slightly. She had heard promises before, but promises didn't always translate into real change. "What about the systemic issues? The bias? The way my family and others like us have been treated for years?" Mayor Klein shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but there was no denying the sincerity in his voice. "We understand that this isn't just about those officers. It's about something much bigger, and we're committed to addressing it. We're going to implement de-escalation training, expand our community outreach programs, and," Simone interrupted him, her voice steady but firm, "I don't want just words, I want real, measurable change. This is about more than a few bad officers. It's about a system that's been built on inequality, a system that needs to be torn down and rebuilt." The room fell silent. Even Darius, who had been watching intently, gave her a look of approval. Simone's words hung in the air, her unwavering conviction a testament to how far she had come. The mayor nodded slowly, as if taking in her words for the first time. "You're right," he said, "and I promise you we will work with the community to make sure the change you're asking for happens. This is just the beginning." Simone felt a surge of something, hope maybe. She wasn't sure, but for the first time in weeks she felt like her voice mattered, like change could actually happen. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick, but it was possible. As she left the mayor's office with Darius, Simone felt the weight on her shoulders lessen, just a little. The road ahead was long, and there would be many battles to fight. But for the first time, she wasn't alone. She had a voice, and that voice was loud enough to make a difference. Later that night, as she sat on her porch with Darius watching the sunset, she felt a deep sense of peace. "You did good, kid," Darius said softly, his voice filled with pride. Simone smiled, her heart full. "We did good." And as the sky darkened, they both knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more work to do, more battles to fight, but they had already won something important. They had won the right to be heard.